The hardest thing about being a mom, entertaining all day long.
My wife is a pillar of our family and such a great example to our children.
My mom is awesome.
My mom makes me do my homework.
The hardest thing about being a mom is keeping them tamed.
And I wish they could stay little forever. Actually, I don't wish that right now.
I love my mother dearly.
But being a grandma is the best.
I love my mommy so much, and it makes me want for the whole entire universe. I love my mom because she's so encouraging to me.
The hardest thing I've ever experienced is being willing to let my children grow up.
It's messy and it's unpredictable.
Yeah, I love my mom.
It's also about not caring if your kid eats things off the ground.
It's the best thing in the world.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom. Thank you for everything you've done for us and all the love you've shown.
Thank you for being the best mother ever.
I love you, Mom.
We love you, Mama. Happy Mother's Day, Mom.
I love you, Mom.
I miss you, Mom.
Love you, Mom.
Love you, Mom.
Happy Mother's Day, babe.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom. I love you.
All right. Hey, what's up, everyone? Hey, welcome to Real Life. My name is Jake, and allow me to add my voice to the chorus of people that hopefully are wishing you a very happy Mother's Day. Moms, it is impossible for us to over-exaggerate the impact that you have in the lives of your kids, and then the impact that they have on other people. The way that you're loving has ripple effects forever and ever. God has been very gracious to me in giving me a great mom. Hi, Mom. I know you're watching online. And then I've also had a front row seat to watch Trudy become an all-star mom, and I am in awe of the way that she loves and forgives and challenges and disciplines, all to build a safe home for our kids. Now, I know that we have some of the best moms in the world here at Real Life, and the reason I know that is because not only do they have a capacity to love, but they also are very honest about the struggle. Because let's be honest, the struggle is real. Raising kids, whether they are still children or have grown into adults, is not for the faint of heart. And that is why I'm so glad we're in this series called The Good Life. Over the last couple weeks, we've been working our way through this beginning of a message that Jesus taught in Matthew chapter 5. It's the most famous message he ever taught. And he starts it off with this list called the beatitudes. And what it is a description of the kinds of people in this world that will truly be happy. These are the kinds of people that God blesses. It's Jesus describing the good life. But what we've also learned over the last couple weeks is that it probably wouldn't make the cover of a brochure for some self-help book. If a social media influencer was advocating for this kind of life, I'm not sure how many likes they would get. But if the author of life itself says this is how life ought to be lived, then we would be wise to listen. And so today we're going to ask, why did Jesus say, God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the whole earth? I can't think of a better beatitude to talk about on this Mother's Day weekend than happy are the humble. Today we're going to talk a little bit about how we see ourselves, our self-view. Because at some point in all of our lives, we've had that moment where we wondered, either externally or internally, am I doing this right? Am I good at this? Am I making a difference at all? And at some point in our lives, we've all looked at different sources for those answers. Some of us looked online for advice. Others of us used the opinions of other people to tell us whether we were worthy. Some of us just created our own goals and have measured ourselves against those. But today we're going to ask, what does God really want for us? How does he want us to see ourselves? Now, let's start here. My guess is that when you walked in here today, you're not pretending to be perfect. You know you got some things to work on. But very few of us walked in here today saying, you know what my problem is? I am so conceited. I am full of myself. I am proud. I am arrogant. That is my problem. And somewhere along the way, probably your mom told you you're not supposed to be arrogant. You're not supposed to be proud. And so you wouldn't call yourself a proud person. But you know some people that are, don't you? Yeah, when we think of pride, we think about the superstar athlete that in the post-game interview beats his chest and speaks in third person. We think about them as proud. We're not like that. Or we think about the celebrities that live in the houses we wish we lived in, or wear the clothes we wish we wore, drive the cars we wish we drove. They're full of themselves. That's not me. Or you think about the politician on the campaign trail that tells everyone that they are God's gift to this country and no one could do it better than them. They have an ego. I don't really have an ego. And so before we wrap up this service, 30 minutes short, because you don't need to hear any of this stuff, let me ask you one question, okay? Let me ask you one question. Which human being did you think about most this week? You had 8.5 billion different people to choose from. Whose calendar, whose problems, whose desires did you consider the most? I know your answer to that question because I know my answer to this question. I like you guys so much, and I didn't think about you guys like at all right? I only thought about myself. You thought about you, and I thought about me. I thought about my bills and how I'm going to pay them. I thought about my bosses and whether they think I'm doing a good job. I thought about my kids and how they ended up this way, and I do not know, all right? I do not know. You thought about you, and I thought about me, and we like thinking about ourselves. In fact, we even created a tool that helps other people think about us while we're thinking about ourselves. Do you know what it's called? It's called the selfie, all right? It's the perfect way of saying, I'm thinking about me, and I want you to think about me while I'm thinking about me. We even have different versions of it. We got the gym selfie that says, while you were eating Cheetos on your couch, you lazy slob, I was getting a workout in, I'm better than you. We got the dinner party selfie that says, look how much fun we're having at this restaurant, all the way pointing out to the other members of the friend group that they didn't get invited. All right, I'm thinking about me. I want you to think about me. Then there's the exotic travel selfie that says, I'm in Paris and you're not. All right, that's what I was doing. All right, I was flexing on all y'all. We've all done it. We think about us all the time. And so if we would have to admit that not only do we know some people that are kind of full of themselves, we would also have to admit that we are also pretty naturally self-centered. The question we want to ask today is, how can we live a life of fearless humility without blowing everything up? How can I live a life where I'm actually okay in a conversation when it's not even about me? And how can I live a life where I don't have to brag about my accomplishments because I'm so secure in what God has already said that it gives me contentment and peace every single day? The question we're asking is, how should we see ourselves? And in order to answer that question, we're going to be in a book of the Bible called 1 Corinthians in chapter 3. So if you got a Bible or a Bible app, I'd love for you to get a head start. Head in that direction. And when you get there, you're going to discover a letter that was written by a guy named Paul. And Paul was the greatest church planter of all time. That means he would move from town to town, and he would gather as many people as he could, tell them about Jesus, help them start a church, and then he would leave and go do it all over again. And if you have a paper Bible in your hands, one of the things you'll discover at the back half of it is a bunch of letters Paul wrote back to those churches that he helped start. And sometimes he would write letters of encouragement. Then sometimes he would challenge them. Other times he would have to correct them. And in 1 Corinthians 3, we're going to see one of those correction moments, because in the life of this young church in the city of Corinth, there was a fight going on. Now, you might be new to church, and you might be surprised to hear that church people fight amongst themselves sometimes. Or maybe you've been a part of a church for like 3 minutes, and you're like, oh yeah, totally, this is how it goes. Now, here was the fight. There was one group of people against another group of people, and they were all battling for control and influence over the church. And they were debating who was the most qualified group to be able to call all the shots and lead this church in Corinth. One group said, hey, we personally know Paul. We ate with him. He prayed over us. He trained us, and because of our personal connection to Paul, that makes us the most qualified to lead this church. But then there was another group that raised their hands and said, hold on, we know Apollos. Apollos was another dynamic communicator and leader in the early church, and they said, we ate with Apollos, and he prayed over us, and he trained us, and so therefore we are the most qualified. And they were going back and forth as to which group ought to be in control. And what we're going to see is Paul's going to enter the fray, and he's going to settle this fight, But even more so than a temporary solution, he's going to provide us a way of seeing ourselves that most of us have never considered, but it can genuinely bring the peace and the contentment that we so desperately desire. So let's check it out. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, we're going to begin in verse 21. It says, "So don't boast about following a particular human leader, for everything belongs to you, whether Paul or Apollos or Peter or the world or life and death or the present and the future. Everything belongs to you, and you belong to Christ, and Christ belongs to God. As for me, it matters very little how I might be evaluated by you or by any human authority. I don't even trust my own judgment on this point. My conscience is clear, but that doesn't prove I'm right. It is the Lord himself who will examine me and decide. So don't make judgments about anyone ahead of time before the Lord returns, for he will bring our darkest secrets to light, and he will reveal our private motives. Then God will give to each one whatever praise is due. For what gives you the right to make such a judgment? What do you have that God hasn't given you? And if everything you have is from God, why boast as though it were not a gift?" So here Paul comes into this argument there in the church in Corinth, and he says, guys, why are you fighting about this? This is the most superficial argument that you could ever have, because Paul and Apollos are on the same team. They're preaching the same message. They're building the same church. It'd be like someone wearing yellow and purple saying, you know what, I'm actually like more Team Luka than I am Team LeBron. They're both Lakers because the Dallas Mavericks inexplicably lost their minds and traded a top 5 talent in the middle of the season for no discernible reason. And now they're both Lakers. They're on the same team. Paul and Apollos are saying, like, no, guys, we're together. But what it reveals is that even 2,000 years ago, human beings were doing the same thing you and I do all the time. They were grabbing anything that would make a discernible distinction between them and other people that made them feel better about themselves. We've been doing it since the beginning of time. What we do is we walk around our world and we play the comparison game, and we try to find people that are maybe doing worse than we are, and it fills us up. That's the game of pride. And so we look around our office. And we say, all right, that coworker that shares that cubicle wall with me, they're so clearly undertrained, and I'm so much more talented, and I bring so much more to this company, and in the comparison game, it puffs us up. And then on Facebook, you see that couple that used to have the profile picture together, but now it's just one of them, and you realize that they're separating, and you look at your marriage, and you think, man, we're like best friends. I couldn't imagine going down that road, and it puffs us up. Then you hear about someone's kid that has gotten in some trouble, and you look at your kids, and they're so obedient, and they're so loving, and they even clean their room without being asked, and it puffs you up. And then you walk into a place like this, and you hear people's stories of their struggles and the bad decisions that they've made. And you think, man, I love this place. I love showing up every single week, and I love singing the songs, and I love hearing God's word, and I feel so connected to God. And in a very twisted way, it puffs us up. This here is the classic view of pride. It's that overinflated ego. It's where you and I spend all of our time looking at other people and saying, how do I measure up? And when we use comparison as the foundation of our identity, it may lead to a feeling of superiority. I look at other people and I look actually down at them. I see that I'm doing better, and it makes me feel better. But here's the problem, is that when you and I use superficial circumstances as the foundation of our identity that tells us whether we're doing well, those same circumstances can change in an instant. You see, there's another side of pride, and it's quieter. It may not be as obnoxious, but it's still pride, and that's the feeling of inferiority. And even though I don't feel better than other people, I'm still thinking about me all the time. And so that coworker that shares that cubicle wall with you, the one that you know you're better than, they got the promotion and you didn't, and it deflates us. Or that marriage that used to be so fun and used to be so easy. Now we're like fighting a lot and it's tense and our words are sharp and it deflates us. And then our neighbor's kids, they made the honor roll and our kids burned down our neighbor's doghouse last week, and it's like, that deflates us. And then you walk into a place like this and you can't think of the last time you actually wanted to sing any of the songs. And like every time you hear from Scripture, you hear from someone on stage, it feels annoying and grating, and you're not even sure why you keep showing up. And it deflates us. When we spend our entire lives defining ourselves, our value and worth in this life compared to other people, it will leave us deflated at some moment. So my question is there a different way? Is there a different way of seeing ourselves that can bring joy and contentment that will always last? A musical artist named Madonna, she perfectly articulated this experience. And if you're under the age of 30, Madonna was very famous, okay? Very, very famous. Your mom loved her, or you can ask her about her at lunch. This is the way she described this cycle. She said, "My drive in life comes from a fear of being mediocre. It's always pushing me. I push past one spell of it and discover myself as a special human being, but then I feel like I'm still mediocre and uninteresting unless I do something else. Because even though I have become somebody, I still have to prove that I am somebody. My struggle has never ended, and I guess it never will." Madonna is one of the most successful women in the music industry history. Her estimated net worth is over $850 million. She sold over 300 million records, had 12 number one songs, and it wasn't enough. That line that she said haunts me. Maybe you'll find it familiar. She said, "Even though I've become somebody, I still have to prove that I am somebody." It's a treadmill that will never get off. So the question is there another way? I'd like to reread some verses that we've already read from 1 Corinthians chapter 4, where Paul is going to give us a different way of seeing ourselves. And if you and I can even just take a step in that direction today, we can truly find God-given contentment. Look at how he described it. He said, "As for me, it matters very little how I might be evaluated by you or by any human authority. I don't even trust my own judgment on this point. My conscience is clear, but that doesn't prove I'm right. It is the Lord himself who will examine me and decide." Paul's saying this to a church 2,000 years ago, but he's trying to get it through to you and me today. He said, how do we know if we're good enough? How should we see ourselves? There is a third way. See, the first thing Paul said is he said, what you think about me is not most important. Could you imagine? All the people pleasers that are hearing this right now, could you imagine the opinions of other people not being the thing that tells you whether you're allowed to have a good day or a bad day? I'm talking about showing up to work tomorrow and not being totally devastated by feedback you receive from your boss. I'm talking about students not allowing the number of likes you get on a post in the first 10 minutes to tell you whether you should keep it up or not. Even on a day like today, the opinions of your own mother are not the most important thing about you. In fact, just for you to hear yourself say it out loud, to sink into your heads and hearts, on the count of 3, I want you to turn to the person sitting next to you. I want you to look them dead in the eyes and say, what you think about me is not most important. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. All right. It feels good, doesn't it? It's therapeutic. Some of you were a little too aggressive in the way you said it, right? You need to chill out. Calm down. What you think about me is not most important. But Paul didn't leave it there. He said there's another step. He said, also, what I think about me is not most important. And this, friends, is where the Word of God and the advice you'll get from the world are going to diverge. Most of the self-help advice that you're going to get in your life is going to say, if you want to have more self-esteem, you just got to believe in yourself more. You need daily affirmations in the mirrors saying, I'm smart enough and I'm good enough and doggone it, people like me. It's some real Space Jam, I believe I can fly kind of stuff, all right? That's what we've got. But here's the problem. if it's up to me to tell myself whether I matter, if it's up to me to determine my own value in this life, I am an unreliable narrator. Because on multiple occasions throughout a day, I can look in the mirror and come to some very different conclusions. I need an outside, independent, trustworthy, and eternal source to tell me who I am. And so on the count of 3, I want you to say that with me. What I think about me is not most important. Ready? 1, 2, 3. What I think about me is not most important. You liked the other one better where you got to yell at people, didn't you? They're like, it's hard for us to accept. So if it's not what you think about me, it's not what I think about me, then who's left? Well, friends, the good news is what God thinks about me is most important. What many of us have done is built our entire lives trying to fill this fragile ego with achievements and possessions and comparisons. And we told ourselves if we can get to the next level and be better than them, finally be able to afford that, it would satisfy. And then we did, and what happened? Nothing. We need God to tell us who we are. And here's what he said, Romans chapter 8, verse 1. Now there is no condemnation for those who belong to Christ Jesus. I'm afraid that most of us walk through every single day as if we are living in the court of public opinion. And in those quiet moments when our head finally hits the pillow, there is a prosecutor in this imaginary courtroom shouting us down with everything wrong that we've ever done in our lives. She said she wouldn't go back to him, and in a vulnerable moment, guess exactly who she called. He said he wouldn't go back to those websites to his wife. Guess what he looked at last night? They said that they could quit whenever they want, but apparently it didn't work. And every single accusation tells us that we're not worthy, tells us that we will never measure up. That is not the good news of Jesus. The gospel message, the good news of Jesus, is that Jesus came and lived the perfect life you and I could never live. And then he paid the price for our sin that we could never afford. And now he has promised us a perfect eternity that you and I can never summon on our own. It's his reward is counted as ours. His status before God is counted as ours. And now we can live in the peace, forgiveness, and love of God. See, friends, the key to battling pride, it's not thinking less of ourselves. It's not talking down to ourselves. It's not saying, really, we're not all that great. It's not comparing up to people we think are doing better than us. We cannot Eeyore our way into humility. That's not how this works. The key to battling pride is to think of ourselves less. It's where I adopt a worldview to where I'm not the main character of this movie. When I think that a world full of 8 billion people is all about me, I may have gotten it out of order. But when I can genuinely say, I'm not at the center of my thoughts, my efforts and desires, now I can possibly find that joy and contentment that God promised. We've already talked about it. It's just really hard to get a good self-view, to understand what we're worth and the impact we have on other people. Today, I'd like for you to hear from one of the all-star moms here at Real Life who is striving in that direction and hear about the impact that she's made on her kids.
Hi, I'm Kelly, and I have 3 adult children, Maddie, Cody, and Aubrey. Being a parent of adult children is a whole new ballgame. Their problems become bigger. They're out in the world, and they become big, real problems that I don't know how people get through without Jesus. And so to be able to help my kids anchor their personal relationship in Jesus has helped a lot, because before we did that, I was at a loss. I was doing things like searching the dresser drawers and all of the things that moms do to try to protect their kids. But I was missing the Jesus part. I came from a place of fear. I was parenting from a place of worry. I was parenting from a place of controlling everything and micromanaging everything. So I can easily look back and remember many, many times since my children have been much older that I completely messed up. I remember vividly times my youngest daughter and we would go toe to toe. And I remember very vividly, like when my son was in high school, like trying to control everything, trying to monitor what he was doing. And if I'm being truthful, there was lots of times I didn't know the answer anymore. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna say a prayer he's safe and hope he's okay. I was praying desperate prayers for God to fix everything that was broken. I kind of wonder what it would have looked different if we would have like all slowed down.
Well, what's interesting is that we also talked to your kids.
No, you did not.
We did? And we wanted you to hear what they had to say.
Oh my goodness gracious.
If you stand up, you're gonna watch a little video. They had to say.
How did they keep this from me?
I want to tell you about our mom. She's our biggest supporter, our best friend, and she's the person that we can always count on to have in our corner.
Her faith is so bold, and it just shows in everything that she does.
Being able to just have a relationship with her where she just truly represents Christ's forgiveness has been such a help in navigating life.
I think for me, becoming a young adult was hard. Everyone around me was hurting. You know, like I looked around and there was just so much hurt and pain. And I just remember always looking at my mom and she was just everybody's like light, you know? And I just remember her saying like, it's all God, like it's because of God. And she just had this peace about her that she just, in the midst of everything kind of feeling like it was falling apart, she was okay, you know? And now coming to Christ and finding that for myself, it makes sense, but back then I didn't know how she did it, and she did it so gracefully.
I made a lot of dumb mistakes in high school, and I really tested her as a parent. Just being able to make those mistakes, and just to know that you could still love me the same after that. To just come back to open arms no matter what truly helped me out.
From a young age, I would struggle a lot with a lot of mental battles, and my mom was just always my biggest supporter. She was always there for me. And it's hard when you're going through something to see the bigger picture of it. And she was just my biggest reminder that God has a plan for it. And I feel like that's the only reason that I got through what I did was because of her.
If my mom were here, I would want to say, thank you for being my best friend. Thank you for helping me through all the hard times and being there, cheering me on at all the good times. Thank you for showing me what a godly wife and a godly mom looks like. And I hope that one day I could be half the person that you are.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I love you.
Happy Mother's Day.
Friends, imagine a life where you weren't constantly occupied by your social status or professional acceleration or family reputation. Imagine a life where you could enjoy a conversation even when you weren't at the center of it. Imagine a life where you could celebrate other people's accomplishments without also having to explain your own. Imagine just enjoying youth soccer games and watching sunsets and a good meal with friends simply because it's good and you have nothing left to prove. God has given us that life. It just requires that we accept it. The good life is not something that we create on our own. It's something that we receive from Him. So today, as we wrap up, I want to remind you of what God has already said about you. If it's true that what God thinks about you is the most important, it'd be good to reflect on what He actually thinks. As you're hearing these words, if it's helpful, you may just want to close your eyes to eliminate distractions and receive what God has already said. God says that you are loved. He says you're so loved that God sent His one and only Son to rescue you from your sin. You're so loved that God, who spoke the universe into being, is also intimately involved in the details of your life. You're so loved that neither death nor life, angels nor demons, present nor future, height nor depth, nor anything else in creation can separate you from God's love. God says you are salt of the earth. Real life, you're a city on a hill. You're different from those around you, and that's a really good thing. You preserve things that want to decay. You bring light into areas of darkness. You are a light tower shining hope to a world in desperate need. God says you are adopted. He knows your family maybe wasn't what you needed it to be. He knows maybe your dad let you down. But when He saved you, He adopted you into His family, and He is our perfect Father. He's gentle in His rebuke. and steadfast in his love. He loves us in our mess, but refuses to leave us in it. He is the perfect dad. God says you are not alone. God tells us that we will walk through the valley of the shadow of death, but not alone. He will be with us. He tells us that in this world we will have trouble, but to take heart because Jesus has overcome it. He tells us to be strong and courageous because he is with us. God says you are fearfully and wonderfully made. He says all those photoshopped images you see online, they don't tell you who you are. God knit you together in your mother's womb. He is the creator God. You are how you are because God wanted you that way. You are enough because you are God's creation. God says you are worth it. You are worth the struggle. You're worth the pain. You are worth Jesus laying down his life. He loves you that much. Friends, we can embrace a life of fearless humility that no longer has anything to prove, and can embrace the truth that what God says about me is most important. Today, we're going to have a moment where we remember why that is a trustworthy statement. There's a symbol that we take. It's called communion. And there's bread and juice that symbolizes Jesus' body and blood that was broken and shed for you and me. And it is the single greatest sacrifice and the single greatest act of love this world has ever seen. At this moment, it ought to set firm in our hearts that it's true, that God loved us that much. If you didn't grab those elements on the way in, all you got to do is raise your hand. One of our volunteers would love to get you what you need. If you're new here, maybe this is your first time or you're still got a lot of questions, there's no pressure for you to participate at all, but I do want to put all our cards on the table. We pray for you every week, that you would meet Jesus right here in this moment, and you would begin a journey with him that you would never regret. But for those of us that are already followers of Jesus, this is our opportunity to remember so you can take communion in your own time.